What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing a continuation of my series on the CompTIA CySA exam guide, and we're going to continue on with evaluating risks. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So the NIST SP 800-30 is a special publication. It's a risk management guide developed by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, and the full title of it is The Guide for Conducting Risk Assessments. It provides a structural, repeated framework for identifying, analyzing, and prioritizing risks to information systems, helping organizations protect sensitive data and support security decision making. So this is one of the guides, or I guess not in a framework, but the guides, as it says, that will come on the exam. This is very important to know. And there's a number of special publications in this 800 series, I believe, but this is one of the important ones. Obviously, as said in the slide, it is for risk management specifically. Let's continue. So what's the purpose of the special publication 800-30? So it is to help organizations evaluate threats and vulnerabilities, determine the likelihood and impact of potential incidents, support risk-based decision-making, enhance overall cybersecurity posture, and is part of a broader NIST risk framework and supports compliance with FISMA, HIPAA, and other standards. So as you can see here, it's pretty much a linchpin for a lot of the bigger picture risk management, right? Again, I'm going to highlight this is an important special publication to remember, a special guide to remember for the exam. All right, and now for the components of this special publication. So number one, your step one is prepare for the assessment. So you're defining the purpose, the scope, assumptions, and constraints. Step two is to identify threat sources and events. This includes actors both internal and external, natural and general attack vectors. 3, identify vulnerabilities and predisposition conditions. So you're finding out the weaknesses in the systems or controls that can be exploited, i.e. the vulnerabilities. Determine likelihood of occurrence. A description of this step is estimate the probability of a threat successfully exploiting a vulnerability. Step 5, determining impact. In this step, you're measuring the potential consequences, whether that's data loss, downtime, reputation damage, etc., etc. Step 6, determine risk. You're combining the likelihood and impact to qualify or quantify the risk. Number 7, you're communicating results. Share findings with decision makers and stakeholders. And number 8, or step 8, maintain assessment. So you're regularly reviewing and updating the risk assessment of the systems as threats evolve, because trust me, they will be evolving constantly. So we're going on to identifying threats. The beginning of risk assessments always start with identifying what types of threats there are in IT environment. The NIST identifies 4 categories of threats that an IT organization might contend with. So you have adversarial threats, accidental threats, structural threats, and environmental threats. So your adversarial threats, as it says here, is mostly to deal with your insider threats, stuff like that. Your accidental threats could be natural disaster. It could be mishaps, mistakes from employees or third-party partners. Structural threats could be, faulty foundation in a building, faulty, say, server rack, stuff like that. Environmental threats, obviously, acts of God, stuff like that. Okay? Identifying vulnerabilities. So the next step in the risk assessment process is a bit more inward looking. So you're focusing on vulnerabilities, and these vulnerabilities can be exploited by threats affecting the CIA triad, which is confidentiality, integrity, availability. And again, for those of you new to this channel, new to this topic, the CIA triad is very important, and I go into it in detail in my last video in evaluating risk. Determining likelihood, impact, and risk. So likelihood is referring to the probability that a specific threat will exploit a given vulnerability within an environment. Impact refers to the consequences or damage that would occur if the threat is realized and the vulnerability is successfully exploited. Risk is a combination of likelihood and impact, and it answers the question, how bad would it be, and how likely would this happen, right? So that's very important when it comes on to quantifying and qualifying risk, right? And then we're going further into identifying vulnerabilities, and you have two types of approaches. We have qualitative and quantitative. So qualitative uses labels. Qualitative uses labels like high, medium, low, fast or good, quick decision making. So this is pretty much the part of the risk assessment where it doesn't necessarily have a metric, but it's more so of a feeling, right? So I'm trying to put a good example. So say, for example, you have let's see, for example, a bank, right? In a bank, a high risk might be different compared to like a restaurant. So in a bank, a qualitative high risk approach or high risk label would be more so like PII, like credit card data, right? That would be a high risk because if those get stolen, there's catastrophic reputation damage, loss of data, lawsuits, all that stuff, right? But if, say, that same bank, I don't know, they lose their payroll for, say, their third-party catering situation that they have going on there for the workers inside, that's a low risk, right? Because, probably the workers can get lunch by themselves or whatever, or find lunch elsewhere, even though they might lose the convenience of, say, the catered food that they have in that bank, even though I don't think banks ever have a system like that. But on the flip side, for a restaurant, if they lost, say, some sort of payment data for their supply chain for their food, that could be catastrophic because food is their product. Compared to, like, say, the financial records, which would be high, but, one might put it medium or slightly, or both high, but like losing your food product would probably be a bit higher than, like, say, their payroll or something like that. I know it's not a great example, but that's pretty much what's coming off of my head. So qualitative is kind of like you look at your business and then you decide based on what your business does and how it's organized, which risk feels, or as a consensus, is the worst or the highest, or which risk is the lowest, or which risk is the medium, right? Enough of that tangent. So we're going into quantitative, the quantitative approach. So with this approach, this is where you're dealing with numbers, metrics, and stuff like that. So this is where you're going to, do your average rate of occurrence and your single loss expenditure and your RPO and stuff like that. And we'll go into that, or single loss expectancy, I should say. It's not expenditure, single loss expectancy, sorry. But we'll go into more of these approaches in later videos so we can break it down, because this is an important part of domain 5, which I think is like the communication and reporting. So you need to know how to quantify risk and stuff like that, given a scenario, because that will come on the test. But we'll go into more details later. And that's it for today's video. This is I think this is the end of evaluating risk. So we went over the NIST special publication 800-30, and we went over identifying the components of that special publication. We went over identifying threats, identifying vulnerabilities, determining likelihood, impact, and risk, and went into more identifying vulnerabilities and, you know, looking at the difference between qualitative and quantitative risk analysis. Didn't have a fancy slide for that final, forgot to put that in. But anyways, guys, what do you guys think about the video? Please let me know in the comment section below. I hope you guys learned something, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.